Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a top 16 breakdown for the PPG OnePiece regionals that happened online this past weekend. It was 512 players, and we do have this top 16 that we see here today. So real quick, thank you to PPG for supplying the deck list and also for live streaming the event. You can find it on their Twitch, and I think they'll be re-uploading it to their YouTube as well, and just everything else for this event. So big thanks to them, and make sure to check out their website. I know they have a lot of events coming up this summer, and OnePiece is definitely going to be on that list. So going on into this breakdown, we do have a total leader breakdown as well. So I'm going to go through that first. We had pretty much Zoro and Kinemon getting half of the represented decks, which is probably pretty standard for what we're doing. I was in this event, so I was one of these 114. So and then also we had some Newgate, some Smoker, some Porio, Kaido, Law, some Kid, Dofi, Zephyr, some Luffy's, and then a couple other lists too. So really interesting to see that you know, even though black is kind of one of the newer colors, it didn't even get like 25% of this breakdown, which is interesting. And again, I think like probably one of the better conversion rates besides what Magellan getting in this top 16. Edward Newgate, I think, did really well this weekend for all three of the events we had in this area, at least in North America and Oceania as well. So being able to use this deck and do well, I think in this top 16 really converts over. So in the top 16, we did have 6 Kinemon, 4 Zoro, 3 Edward Newgates, 1 Law, 1 Magellan, and a Monkey D. Luffy as well. So again, no black in this top 16, which is not too surprising. I know it's not as good and consistent as other decks. It definitely can top, but I think it can fold to a little bit of aggression, and it is a little bit of a kind of control deck that I think a lot of people are trying to figure out at the same time. So anyways, we're going to go over the top placing list for each one of these leaders. I'm going to start off with this first place list. So this is Quan Lee's first place Kinemon, and I'm going to be doing an interview with him as well. I think it should be dropping the evening of this video dropping as well. But going into his list, he is running pretty much the package that I think a lot of people have agreed on. When I played this deck in this event, I went with strictly almost all Odin stuff. I didn't have Bonnie. I just played Momo and just kind of had a lot more of the Wano country stuff, including 5 of the Yamato, 4 of the 5-drop Yamato, which is the secret rare one. To use that to kind of bait a lot of like hand destruction-ish by making them over counter and try to get out of those attacks as well. So that was kind of the idea of my build. But this build, I think, is more standard for what we have, running a good amount of the supernovas, and we do have a top end of the 7-drop. Most people are kind of opting for the 7-drop Useless Kid just because it's not as like the 8-drop is a lot easier to get around, I think, than it used to, and just having a big blocker that can also have something that can attack and then come back, I think is great in this game right now. And 7k, a lot of decks are 7k is really hard to get around still, unless like your opponent's using a lot of effort, and you can still just do like an Odin effect where you swing with it twice and then you can drop a Kid at the same time. Only issue with that is that you won't have enough Dawn for your events, but other than that, I think it's a solid kind of piece there. So I like this deck. I think Kinemon's going to be doing well for pretty much this entire format, and congrats to Quan on their finish there. Next up, we have the second place, and this is Jackson Hoang's Trafalgar Law, which honestly, I didn't expect to be doing as well, at least not as well early into this format. I think it's a deck that takes a lot of practice and a lot of tinkering to kind of adjust to what people are playing and seeing. And honestly, like for most multicolored decks, I would say it has a lot going against it right now, just because I think the game is really aggressive, like Zoro, and most of the Whitebeard kind of decks are more very aggressive based, and having a 4 life leader is kind of rough for that. And honestly, there's just like a lot more ways to get around these 1-drop blockers now too. There's a lot more of those destruction in general. There's a lot of ways for you to interact with your opponent's board to make it hard for them to get into that 5 wide to be able to use the Trafalgar Law effect. So I think it's really cool to see that it's still topped. I think obviously the strongest card in this deck from the new set is the Curly Dedan. Being able to play a 2-drop that finds a 1-drop that can find a 1-drop that can find something else is really great. It's really solid when that happens. So it really helps you build a lot of board and hand at the same time. So I think that's helpful for you there. In Vista as well, very good for this deck to just remove a lot of stuff from our opponent's board if they're trying to be really aggressive, especially like some of the Zoro decks that play a bunch of their 1-drops. You can play this Vista to kind of slow them down. And the fact that you can bounce this to hand and play it again if you need to, I think is strong. And I think the only thing is that there's not a lot of green in this deck. specifically because like most of the good cards are red, and this only finds red 1-drop characters. It doesn't find red or green. If this found green 1-drops, this would be super busted, but it only finds red ones, so it can't find the beige or bonnie. But you do have to be careful about which ones you do, especially since a lot of the greens are high cost. But I think that kind of makes sense where you play your low cost and to go in the green high cost, including 4 of the Trafalgar Law, which is great, and then none of the Luffy, none of the Rush Luffy in this, especially with how it is interesting. But I think being able to play Law to be able to have something attack twice and have something that has that counter power probably makes a big difference as well. So congratulations to Jackson on their 2nd place finish there. And next up, we do have the deck that probably a lot of people are surprised about. I'm definitely surprised that this one topped and did as well as it did. It's 5th place, Tyler Bollin's Magellan, which we're just going to probably go over this whole deck because me included, I'm like, I just wrote this off as a deck that didn't do very well most of the time. At least I didn't see any good list over in the Asia meta that I looked. And so your turn was returned when a Dawn is returned from your field to your Dawn deck. This leader gets plus 1k during the turn. So whenever you do Dawn -1, once per turn, you do get that boost, which is kind of nice. Especially being able to get a free 6k, I could see being great against all of the Edward Newgates, because that just means you get to match their 6k power for free, which could be pretty important. And then you just have your kind of whole archetype here, being able to look like it's just honestly, this is all assumptions. If this is wrong, please let me know in the comments below if I'm looking at this deck wrong. But I think some of the important cards are included. Sadie, so on play you get to play a Jailer Beast type character card from your hand, which can include the Mini Koala or Mino Koala, which lets you have a blocker that also, if your leader is impelled down, you get to ramp 1, which is nice because we are one of those. And also the Minotaur has double attack, and if your leader is impelled down, add 1 Dawn. So both of these have the same effects, that if you do try to get rid of them, they have the effect to help you get more Dawn, which is really nice for that effect. So and then other than that, we do have the X-Drake, the Douglas Bullet, the Magellan, the Queen, and the Guild Tessero. Being able to attack with this and draw 2, I think, can help you as well. And then just having the high end being King is really interesting too. So I'm guessing this is kind of more of like a mid-range deck in itself. We do also have the Magellan Super Rare, so Dawn -1 on play. Your opponents rest one of their returns one of their Dawn to their deck. So being able to use this effect to unramp our opponent is great. I know a lot of decks go a certain way, or like go first or second, specifically get to be the first one to get to a certain amount of Dawn, and by using this Dawn minus effect, it does kind of prevent them from getting there, which can kind of delay them a turn, which is nice. And also opponent's turn, when this character is KO'd, your opponent returns 2 of their Dawn on their field to their Dawn deck as well. So being able to have like this, if you play this card on curve, I can see it being very successful for you and very obnoxious as well. If you keep being able to stack them and making it harder for your opponent to get to the Dawn threshold they want to get to, you can really just slow them down and kind of chip away with them with some of your better things. So I think that's really strong for the deck, and I can see how that could be a good game plan against some of the decks we see right now. And I think that's mostly what I want to go over. I'm going to be testing this deck myself. I have a One Piece testing stream later this week, so I'm going to definitely do that, and we'll see if I can kind of decide how I feel about this deck and how it does and kind of everything else. So congrats to Tyler on their finish there. Next up, we do have Sheng's Edward Newgate, and I've said this before, there's 2 ways to build Newgate in right now. There's the Moby Dick version, which Moby Dick is getting banned, at least in Asia and probably future. And then there's also the Straw Hat. And by and large, most of the top 16s this weekend have been the Straw Hat variant. So it's still a very strong deck, and I don't think anyone should be worried about it going away anytime soon, at least here in set 2 in this meta. So the idea for this deck is pretty simple. I did interview Nico, who did also top for this event. He's on the website as well. So if you guys want to check that interview about his thoughts about this deck and choices that he made, because this looks almost identical to his build. I think the bigger changes are that I think he only plays 2 ace, doesn't run any guard points. I don't think he plays the Nico Robbins either, so I think that's the swaps there. And probably plays some more 2Ks. I know he plays like 4 Vistas, but being able to just be very aggressive with your deck, being able to draw twice and be 6K on both defense and offense helps you a lot, and it's just very good in that way too. So I think, I don't know, Newgate is really growing on me. I think he's going to be a lot more prevalent the more we go into this meta, and we're going to see if that's true or not. So congrats to Sheng for their finish there. And then next up, we do have Nicholas with their Zoro. This is their 7th place list, and even though Zoro is really popular, it didn't get it barely got into the top 8, right? It got 7th, and it did get 7th, 8th, and 9th there, but it is, I don't know. I think this deck is very strong. I think it's probably the end of the bottom of like tier 1 right now. It does a lot of good things, and being able to have these 1-drops that bump other 1-drops I think is really kind of unique to this deck and very strong at the same time. So that can kind of get some unexpected like boost to your attacks that your opponent isn't really looking for, and kind of help you clench out some games. So I think that's very strong. I think there's a lot of ways for this deck to be countered, and honestly, like if you don't see your card draw, most of your card draw draws other card draw, right? So if you don't see it, you don't see any more of it either. So there are some ways to be defensive against this. I think Newgate is also a really good counter to this too, because that 6k makes a huge difference when you're trying to get a lot of swings onto your opponent's leader. You're just automatically negating like 1 or 2 attacks per turn. So I think that's great. And I think Zoro's good. I just don't think it's the best deck in the format, but I think it's the deck that everyone's running, and it's almost impossible for it to not top because of that. And lastly, we do have our 10th place Monkey D. Luffy, and I'm really happy to see Luffy get a top here. I definitely, it was the joke last format. I think Luffy is better than Zoro. I don't think that anymore. I definitely agree that Zoro is better right now, but I do like Luffy. I have been testing it myself. It's kind of more of a mid-range version of Zoro than the like aggressive version of Zoro, as we see mostly. And it went all right, and I don't think it was super good, but I do like this list. It does look a lot like a Zoro list at the same time. Has a lot of the same cards, but just a little bit more on that control side. So the big kind of changes here is that we are running like Mass Deuce, which is really interesting. So this card being able to be a 2k counter, but then also KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 2k power less. So it's kind of like just a smaller version of like Beppo, which is interesting, but you can play it on turn 2. And it's only 2k power less. So I don't know how I feel about this. If it's just another 2k, I get it. But otherwise I think Beppo is just better, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. This is great for this deck too, especially when you are trying to be more control-y. And the only thing is, like, I'm surprised there's no like Trafalgar laws to help you get that minus DP to get stuff into the ranges you need to. But otherwise than that, like Monkey D. Luffy is definitely a better leader to abuse the Edward Newgate, because you can on turn 9 play it, and then on the next turn you can play another one, and then use the leader effect to put another one under Newgate and get another 12k swing, pop something if needed, and like you're again another 7k leader for the turn. So all of that seems really good. I think this is definitely the better leader to abuse this card, but I think Zoro can definitely be more aggressive when they need to be, and it's a bit of a balance. So I'm happy to see Luffy. I hope to see more and some more top 16s, and congrats to Kory for getting it there. So that is going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Thanks again to PPG for supplying these deck lists and the stream as well. Make sure to check out their links, and make sure to check out the link to this page for the deck list if you want to see them. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.